Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajagacharya Stotra Sutta Shishimada's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajagacharya Stotra Sutta Shishimada's Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Jamunamai Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai, Brihat Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 7th chapter, text 36. Kalena milita diyam amrisha nirnam. Kalena milita diyam avamrisha nirnam. Kalena milita diyam avamrisha nirnam. Stoka yusam swanigamo bata durapada. Stoka yusam swanigamo bata durapada. Avirhitastvanu yugam sahi satyavacham. Avirhitastvanu yugam sahi satyavacham. Veda druman vitapaso vibhajishyati sma. Veda druman vitapaso vibhajishyati sma. Kalena milita diyam avimrishya nirnam. Stoka yusam swanigamo bata durapada. Avirhitastvanu yugam sahi satyavacham. Veda druman vitapaso vibhajishyati sma. Others, please. Kalena milita diyam avimrishya nirnam. Mataji's. Kalena, in course of time. Milita Diyam, of the less intelligent persons. Avamrisya, considering the difficulties. Nirnam, of humanity at large. Stoka Ayusam, of the short-living persons. Swanigamaha, the Vedic literatures compiled by him. Bata, exactly. Duraparaha, greatly difficult. Avirhitaha, having appeared as. To, but. Anuyugam, in terms of the age. Saha, he, the Lord. He, certainly. Satyavatyam, in the womb of Satyavati. Vedadrumam, the desire tree of the Vedas. Vitapasaha, by division of branches. Vibhajishyati, will divide. Sma, as it were. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The Lord Himself, in His incarnation as the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, will consider His compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with short life. And thus, He will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches, according to the circumstances of the particular age. Purport. Herein, Brahma mentions the future compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam for the short-lived persons of the Kali age. As explained in the first canto, the less intelligent persons of the age of Kali would be not only short-lived, but also perplexed with so many problems of life due to the awkward situation of the godless human society. Advancement of material comforts of the body is activity in the mode of ignorance, according to the laws of material nature. Real advancement of knowledge means progress of knowledge and self-realization. But in the age of Kali, the less intelligent men mistakenly consider the short lifetime of 100 years parentheses, now factually reduced to about 40 or 60 years, to be all in all. They are less intelligent because they have no information of the eternity of life. They identify with the temporary material body existing for 40 years and consider it the only basic principle of life. Such persons are described as equal to the asses and bulls. But the Lord, as the compassionate Father of all living beings, imparts unto them the vast Vedic knowledge in short treatises like the Bhagavad Gita and, for the graduates, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Puranas and the Mahabharata are also similarly made by Vyasadeva for the different types of men in the modes of material nature. But none of them are independent of the Vedic principles. Om Gana Timanandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakaramayam Tarati Swaparantikam. So once again we're hearing Lord Brahma. He's speaking to Narada Muni here, and he's foretelling about the future compilation of the Srimad Bhagavatam by Srila Vyasadeva. And this actually is referred to earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It appears in the first canto, 4th chapter, this story. And it goes something like this, that Vyasadeva, he lived in the Himalaya mountains. He was not there, as it, is referred to in the translation, it's referred to as the Lord himself in his incarnation of the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva. So he's not there on a vacation. He's not camping out, okay? And he didn't go there to become self-realized because he's already self-realized. He was there because he felt that that would be the most appropriate place for him to execute his mission. And his mission is to disseminate Vedic knowledge into human society. And he already decided, as a result of reflecting upon it, that now, at this point in time, then, 5,000 years ago, it's going to have to put some things in writing. Prior to that, the Vedic knowledge was transmitted by orally, from spiritual master to disciple. But Vyasadeva could see that, okay, now, from this point onwards, things are going to start going seriously downhill. People's memories are going to get shorter, among other things. And they're just not going to be able to, what to speak of, assimilate. They're not even going to be able to remember what they're hearing from their spiritual master. So I got to write this stuff down. So that's what he's there to do, okay? And he's got a nice setup. As I said, he's in the Himalaya mountains. His place was called Samya Prash. It's overlooking the Saraswati River. There's a beautiful picture of that. We've seen when Go to Chandra gives class, he usually puts that picture up there. It's a very beautiful setting. And it's about as off the grid as you could possibly get. No electricity, no, nothing. He's just there in his little cottage and overlooking the Saraswati River. Totally fresh air, get intoxicated breathing it. Now he's concentrating. This is how the story goes. He's concentrating, and he's at this point he's already it's a work in progress. He's already underway. He's already compiled the Yajurveda. See, but he's thinking, I got to do something more. He could see that it's going to be. It's too difficult. He can understand. I got to break it down. I got to break it down further to make it. He's trying to make this as easy as possible for everybody because he can understand. And Prabhupada mentions that in his purport how degraded things are going to become. So he decides, okay, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it into 4. So originally there was just the Yajurveda, but then he decided, okay, well we're going to divide this into the Yajurveda, the Atharva Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Rig Veda. And he did that, okay? And then he had different sages, different great sages, and he put different sages in charge of the different Vedas. And I can't remember which one he put in charge of which Veda, but It's there in that 1, 4, 18, 19, 20, like that text. So he went ahead and did that, and I guess the idea would be that, they would then explain it. They would have disciples. They would explain it to their disciples, elaborate upon it, etc. So he did that. Now, he's still not feeling quite right. He's thinking, okay, but you know what? These Vedas, they're kind of intellectual, and I don't know if everybody's going to be able to get a handle on that. So he went ahead and he decided he did the Mahabharata. And that was for the benefit of women, Vaishyas, and Sudras. Women, people who generally don't have the qualification to understand Vedic knowledge. But he wanted them to also have the opportunity. So that's why he did the Mahabharata. And so he did that. Meantime, he's still up there in his place, up there in Samyaprash in the Himalayas. And then after having done that, you think that, well, he might be feeling pretty good. Like, okay, got my job done here, doing pretty good. But he was saying same thing. He was just, it's described, he was, there and concentrating one day, meditating, and he was thinking, you know what? I don't feel satisfied. I don't feel kind of like I really hit the target here. And he was trying to work out what was wrong. He was reflecting. It's described in the Bhagavatam. He was reflecting. He was thinking, what's going on? Because I know I'm doing everything right. I'm following all the rules and regulations. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, right? In terms of my personal life, I'm faultless, really. I mean, I don't mean puffed, be proud or anything, but I'm doing everything right. And I produced this literature, and it's good. I've churned out some good stuff here. So why am I feeling dissatisfied? And he figured it out. And if you go, I think it's 1:4:23 or something like that. I can't remember the exact verse, 30 something. Right towards the end of the chapter there, he figured it out. He said, I know what it is. I've neglected to directly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And that's probably why I'm feeling somewhat dissatisfied, why I'm not feeling completely satisfied. So, interestingly enough, right at that time, right then, when he was just had come to that conclusion, who should come upon the scene but Narada Muni, who happens to be Vyasadev's spiritual master. So Vyasadeva was very happy to see him, right? And he immediately offered him a nice seat and, whatever other hospitality he could offer to his spiritual master in those humble surroundings, humble settings. And so Narada Muni, he sits down, it's described, and he's smiling. And he says to Vyasadeva, so, Vyasadeva, are you satisfied identifying the body and the mind as objects of self-realization? Kind of having like a bit of a go and dig at him there. Because in the purport, Prabhupada explains that, Vyasadeva was of great lineage, great parentage. His father was Parashara Muni, so, he knew better than that. He knew that, of course, that wasn't the case. But then Narada Muni kind of changes gears there, and he says, you've done a lot of really good work. I mean, you produced the Vedas, you put it in writing, and you divided them, and then you produced the Mahabharata, and then the Puranas and the Itihasas, and what's going on? Why are you feeling dissatisfied? Narada Muni asked him that, and Vyasadeva, basically his response was, he said, well, hey, you're my spiritual master. You tell me. And he glorified him in different ways. He said, you're like the sun. You're all pervading. You go and you know everybody's heart, and et cetera, et cetera. Some very beautiful verses, glorifying Narada Muni. And basically he asked him, well, please, you tell me. And Narada Muni said, okay. Well, basically what it is that, I'll just say it. He just told him that, exactly what Vyasadeva figured out for himself. You've neglected to glorify directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, why don't you go ahead and do that? And that'll solve the problem. Okay? And then he told them that he should meditate in trance. This, it's later in the chapter. Meditate in trance on the pastimes of the Lord, and then describe them in, beautiful language, and that'll satisfy the hankerings of everybody, the learned and the foolish and everybody. And so, sure enough, he did that. That was what Vyasadeva went on to do. So it's interesting here, though, in this particular verse that we're dealing with today, it's glorifying Srila Vyasadeva for an accomplishment, for an achievement that he wasn't satisfied with himself. Because if you really pay careful attention to it, it says, the Lord himself in his incarnation as the son of Satyavati will consider his compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with short life, and thus he will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches according to the circumstances of the particular age. So somebody, upon reading that, might think, okay, well, that's it. That was, that did the job. But no, as we just heard, Vyasadeva didn't feel that did the job, and that was confirmed by Narada Muni. It had to go further. He actually went, after doing this, he went on to give us the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's important there. And now in the purport here, Prabhupada makes some interesting point. He talks about, it's obviously he's referring to certain verses earlier on in the Bhagavatam. Looks like in the first part of his purport, he's referring to that verse, Prayena Prayusa Sabya Kalinasmin Yugejana Manda Sumandamataya Mandabhagya Hi Upadruta, which describes how the people in the age of Kali are lazy, misguided, short-lived, quarrelsome. What else? Always disturbed and unlucky, yeah. Above all, always unfortunate, right, like that. So, and it's really far out in the purport how Prabhupada is obviously not a big fan of the Kali Yuga, because he starts off by saying, but in the age of Kali, the less intelligent men mistakenly consider, I really got a kick out of this when I read it, mistakenly consider the short lifetime of 100 years. Okay, so initially he's given us 100 years. Then he says, but now factually reduced to about 40 to 60 years to be all in all. And then it doesn't take them, within 2 sentences, listen to what happens. He says, they are less intelligent because they have no information about the eternity of life. They identify with the temporary material body existing for 40 years. It's gone from 100 years to 40 years in a couple sentences. 40 years, and consider it the only basic principle of life. So, and then he goes on and he refers to that verse from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it describes the people as asses and bulls. Was it Yashyat Mabudhe Tunape Tudaduke Swadat? Help me out. Boma Ijadi, Salilek Nakari Chit, Janeshu Abigeshu Saeva Gokara. Yeah, so that's the famous verse. Prabhupada actually quoted that verse a lot. It appears in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I think it's Krishna speaking to the gopis. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Prabhupada quoted that verse a lot, so that he's referring that there. Now, then it goes on to say how it says, but the Lord, as the compassionate Father of all living beings, imparts unto them the vast Vedic knowledge in the short treatises like Bhagavad Gita for the graduates and Bhagavad Gita and for the graduates Srimad Bhagavatam. So one point here is this, that a couple points. One is we can understand from the first part of what I was saying in the class that the importance of the spiritual master. Because Vyasadeva, of course he's being he's referred to here as the Lord himself, but he needed that inspiration, from Narada Muni, who's the spiritual master. He figured it out himself, right? But Narada, the pastime is that Narada Muni had to come and kind of confirm it, and then he gave him his marching orders. He said, okay, now this is what I want you to do. You got it right, and now this is what I want you to do. So that's, we can see the importance of the spiritual master. And there's other examples like that. Lord Chaitanya is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he didn't start manifesting his ecstatic pastimes, until after we heard it this morning. Actually, we just heard it this morning. Until after he came back from Gaya. And what happened in Gaya? That was where he met Ishvara Puri, his spiritual master. And that's when the transformation took place. So even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's showing. This is like, he's showing by the example. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead gets inspiration, at least for our benefit, for our edification. It gets information from the spiritual master. So how important is the spiritual master? And now here in this part, in the latter part of the purport, as I mentioned, it's referring to the Lord as the compassionate Father of all living beings. So the compassionate Father is trying to help us. That's what a compassionate Father does. And specifically, the compassionate Father is trying to help us by giving us Vedic knowledge, and in the form of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. So logically, if the compassionate Father is trying to help us by giving us Vedic knowledge in a written form, we should be interested in it. That's what I took away from that part of the purport, that, okay, Krishna's coming as Vyasadeva, and he's trying to help us by giving us these books, by giving us literature, so we should be interested in it. Now, on that point, I'll speak from my own kind of personal experience. When I first joined, I gobbled up Prabhupada. I gobbled up Prabhupada's books. I would everyone, as soon as a book came out, because I came in 73, middle of April 1973. I think they were up to like third canto part 2. Third canto part 1, first canto and second canto were out. I believe the 3.1 was out when I joined already. I'm pretty sure it was. The first book I actually remember coming out was the 3.2. But it's like whatever was out, you just immediately grabbed it and you read it. Everything that was written already, and that was kind of like a lot of devotees had that same sort of a mood. And somehow or another, over the years, though, it's kind of I got out of the habit. Nobody had to tell me you have to read an hour a day. I thought that would be like a punishment. Oh, what do you mean, just an hour a day? I want to read like 4 or 5 hours a day, 6 hours, But anyway, somehow or another, over the years, it's, I got out of the habit for one reason or another. So the point I want to make is that you have to do whatever you got to keep interest in these books. And I just want to share with everybody one thing that I've done that's helped me rekindle an interest in Prabhupada's books, and that is I'm taking shelter of devotees who have an interest in Prabhupada's books. And specifically, I could tell you, I'll give you a very specific example. I was really struggling with the 5th canto. That was like, whoa, what the heck is going on here for me? And I don't feel embarrassed to admit that, because a couple of days ago, I was reading a conversation where in a book that was written by Dhanavir Maharaj. It was actually a special edition. It was glorifying, he wrote it just after Sadaputta Prabhu had passed away. So it was called Transcendental Genius. It was, the first half of the book was dedicated to glorifying Sadaputta. So in one of the homages, I guess you'd say, or, whatever, it was written by Hari Sari. So he was describing how he was, in the process of trying to glorify Sadaputta, he was describing how in 1977, Prabhupada was in Mayapur, and he had already received, information. He'd already received information from somebody who was representing the Bhaktivedanta Institute, the scientists group, I don't know, the name was not given, so I'm not going to speculate. But that person told Prabhupada, we can't make heads or tails of it. I think it's just going to have to be something that's going to be explained by some next generation or something like that. And Prabhupada, he knew. He didn't chastise. He's, okay, just leave it at that. Go on and do other things, focus on other work. But Prabhupada himself didn't, because Prabhupada had already started, by that time he'd already was talking about the Vedic planetarium. He'd already had that idea that he wanted to have a way to demonstrate the universe as it's described in the fifth canto, the Vedic literatures in general, and the fifth canto in specific. So Prabhupada didn't give up on it, even though there's, this BI kind of threw in the towel at that point. So some devotees, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was one of them, Sarabi, a devotee named Yasodhanandana, Pushkar was their artist. He was the person, they were going to try to figure it out, and he was going to illustrate it for him, according to scale. Pushkar went to Calcutta, he was buying all these huge pieces of paper and taping them together, and had this all described to me by devotees. So anyway, so they were making a stab at it, and so at one point, Harisari puts an excerpt of a conversation. So Tamal Krishna's going to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, how did you write this? How'd you do this? And Prabhupada said, actually, my brain does not accommodate all this knowledge. He said, I had help. And Tamal Krishna said, who helped you? And he said, that Krishna, he helped me. Even Prabhupada was acknowledging himself that, this is pretty, wow, difficult stuff to grasp right off the, and right off the bat. But, so anyway, it's when if you don't have a certain, it's hard to grasp. Devotees came back, even those devotees came back to Prabhupada after a while, and they said, Prabhupada, I don't know how we're going to be able to do this, because we're studying it very carefully. It seems like it's describing the earth as being flat, but we know it's like we fly around it in airplanes, and we can't really figure it out how to present this, And Prabhupada, I can't remember all of it, but I remember Prabhupada gave him an analogy. He said that your intelligence is like that of an animal, a bull, that's tied to what do they call it? It goes around, one of those things that they make, crush the grains with. Yeah. So Prabhupada was saying, you're like that. You're like the bull. Because he's on a rope there, and it's tied to a pivot, and all he could do is go round and around, and that's, you can't go past that. So he gave him that, But sometimes Prabhupada wasn't. He also wasn't, coming forth with, well, just do it like this and this and this and this and this. But he didn't have any doubts that it was correct. He just was, how exactly we're going to show this, And that's why he was asking for help from the disciples and everybody. They actually, it was interesting to note that at one point he called in this South Indian Brahmin. There was this one Brahmin in South India. He had a reputation of being very knowledgeable of the fifth canto. So Prabhupada had him flown up from South India. And Harisari mentions that was significant, because Prabhupada was super frugal. And for Prabhupada to fly somebody up to hear what he had to say was like, wow. Anyway, the guy got there, and immediately Prabhupada said, okay, can you make a model, give us a picture of what, describing the fifth canto, what it looks like. And the man said, oh, well, so they politely told him, well, thank you very much anyway, but, and that was it. And then he went, just work with his disciples. So anyway, getting back to my original point, that I have to admit, when I read that book, Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy by Sadhuputta, and Judah Karma's written the book, Human Devolution, and then Sadhuputta wrote another book, Alien Identities, it really helped me. It just helped me get a handle on it. And and I felt really good, because in that comment that Harisari was writing, I thought maybe it's just me. I was kind of, all these years, maybe it's just me. But then Harisari said, no. He said, among the devotees, he said, it was kind of, nobody talked about the fifth canto. That was kind of like taboo. You just didn't bring it up, because it was like, what are you going to say, But Harisari said in this glorification of Sadhuputta that when he came out with that, the devotees felt that, okay, now we have a way to understand this, that we feel is intellectually respectable. We feel good, confident about it, and we feel like that we could also go out and present this to other people and feel, this is how you understand it. And so my point is that's a useful way to get more attached to Prabhupada's books. If you're not already attached sufficiently, if you want to increase your attachment, take shelter That's what I mean. I'm giving you my specific example, but there's so many other devotees who have, how would you say it, elaborated on what Prabhupada taught us in his books. And, they obviously have an attraction and attachment for reading Prabhupada's books. So by taking shelter of them and taking advantage of their association, that can help. That helped me tremendously. And the second point, the last point I'd like to make, is that we have to, as I said, the compassionate Father is giving us this knowledge in the form of literature, so we have to be interested in the literature. And our specific spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, has asked us not only to study his books, to become very, learned in his books, but also to distribute them, right? And I'd just like to read one paragraph which appears in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila. This is chapter 17, same chapter we're reading from, but earlier on, text 78. Where Prabhupada gives a very interesting instruction, and which relates to this point of not only studying the books, but giving them to other people. Prabhupada says, he's talking about, appears in a purport to a part where Lord Chaitanya is telling Murari Gupta, he says, you have pleased Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna is pleased with you. So Murari Gupta goes, he's like a little bit, not flabbergasted, but he's kind of, wow, that's like, who am I, And he quotes this verse from Sudama Brahman about, to the gist of, I'm a poor Brahmin. You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're hugging me. You're embracing me. Wow. And he's expressing how unqualified he felt. And so Murari Gupta, in that, following in Sudama Brahman's footsteps, is, quoting that verse. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains that, Murari Gupta, he felt like that. He was actually technically not a Brahmin. He was a Brahma Bandhu, technically. I think he was a Vaidya or something, which was considered, almost on the level of a Sudra. So he wasn't technically a Brahmin. So then Prabhupada concludes his purport by saying that, he makes the point that the members of the Krishna consciousness movement, what to speak of not being Brahmins, we're not even Brahma Bandhus. And this is what he says, so just a couple sentences. He says, the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness cannot even call themselves Brahma Bandhus. And here it comes. This is the important instruction from this whole. It says, therefore, our only means for satisfying Krishna is to pursue the injunctions of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who says, Yade Deka Tade Kaha Krishna Upadesh. Amara, Agyaya, Guru, Hana, Tada, A Desh. Quote, whomever you meet, instruct him on the teachings of Krishna. In this way, on my order, become a spiritual master and deliver the people of this country. End quote. That's from Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text 128. And Prabhupada concluding sentences, simply trying to follow the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we speak to the people of the world about Bhagavad Gita as it is. This will make us qualified to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So that's something to think about. Prabhupada's saying that, he says it twice. He says, therefore, our only means for satisfying Krishna is to pursue the injunction of Lord Chaitanya. And then the last sentence he says, by doing that, this will make us qualified to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So that's referring to preaching. Preaching can take many forms. I'm going to paraphrase an expression that the non-devotees use. There's more than one way to peel a potato. I'm not going to say what their expression is because it's kind of not nice. But there's more than one way to peel a potato. You don't have to go out on a parking lot. You don't have to go out, on a college campus. You could, there's so many different ways. But everybody should be thinking, I got to do this. Everybody should feel, I got to do this. I got to do it directly or help the people who are doing it or something. That's part of being a devotee. No, it's there's different stages. It's, Kanishtadikari, Madhyamadikari, Uttamadikari. So if I'm saying anything that I hope I don't offend anybody by what I'm about to say, but my understanding is that to come to the Madhyamadikari platform means you take that. You're taking this on as part of your sadhana. You're holding yourself responsible for more than just chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 regulative principles. You also have to hold yourself responsible to a certain extent, and the greater extent you do, the more you're advancing. Hold yourself responsible for trying to give it to other people. And as I said, there's more than one way to peel a potato. It doesn't mean you have to take a box of books and go out on the street. Any way you could do it, or any way you could help people who are doing it, to the degree you develop that consciousness, to that degree you're advancing in Krishna consciousness. So I'll end there. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Sorry, I think I went over time. I apologize. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.